I put it right where my head goes. My voice. I've got to get my voice right. There's no... I'm not putting that in. Don't. Please don't. Please, feature me, I'm begging you. I'm making the representation wall a thing now, including brisket. Vague representation is bad. Far too often, trans characters are only hinted at in media, leaving their gender up to interpretation. This method allows them to pass by unbeknownst to trans folks, leaving actual trans people to fight for the little scraps of representation we are given. Sometimes this is the studio trying to get a queer audience without alienating traditional viewers. Sometimes this is all that a creator of a show or movie can get their studio to agree with. And sometimes it is the only way to get a queer-coded character past the studio and onto the screen. Every time, we get left behind. I watched Blue Eye Samurai recently, and I was rather excited when I saw an episode with pretty clear subtext about how crushing the main character Mizu felt performing femininity. He is piled upon by men, crushing him with a door, and these shots are interspliced with shots of Mizu putting on makeup in an attempt to make amends with his husband for being stronger than him. He is shown starting the process of binding, expressing clear disgust at his chest in the mirror. He is enraged if anyone refers to him as a woman, and he is told that he is more a man than any that have come through my doors by the leader of a brothel. As clear as I felt these signs were, I began to worry as the show went on. I knew that they wouldn't be enough on their own, and the closer I got to the end, the less likely it became that they would ever have him reject the perception of his assigned gender as anything that defined him. Still, I had hoped that the signs would be strong enough to get through to a fair amount of the audience, anyone with an eye for subtext. But I was wrong. Most of the discussions I saw online sided with the classic trope of Mizu just being a woman who's in disguise to act with the freedom of a man, failing to realize that that itself is a queer approach to life. I saw one person say that the discussions of Mizu and similar characters being trans were so tiring. They find acknowledgement of our existence tiring, while making our existence as exhausting as they can. I'll never be able to fully grasp why. I also saw a lot of people claiming that Mizu just doesn't care about gender, and would likely use they-them pronouns. This stance usually came from other queer folks. It's a far better assumption to be sure, and would still be queer representation if so, but an indifference towards gender in your character is a much less full-throated support of trans people than a character who presents how they want for their own sake, not just to receive the privileges of a certain gender. After all, a lot of us lose privileges when we accept ourselves as being trans. It's not something that raises our station. Usually it only sends it off a cliff. You cannot represent trans people with a character who transitions to make their life easier. A character like that has very little in common with us. I also take issue with this assumption because it ignores Mizu's clear negative reactions to being misgendered, which in turn normalizes those reactions and therefore the actions that incite them. Flying into a rage at being called Miss, threatening Ringo when he refers to him as a girl. These moments happened in private. If he didn't care about his gender, I doubt he'd handle these situations the same. I'm sure he'd still be upset at being locked into a gender, but the strength of these reactions definitely surpass the level of someone who's just indifferent to gender. Now, it's an open secret that Netflix's CEO is homophobic. Under his control, queer shows are cancelled left and right. He refers to queer audiences as small, stating that you need to talk to small audiences on a small budget and large audiences on a large budget. His co-CEO, Greg Peters, appears to be just as out of touch. Because of this, I don't blame the creators of the show, but I also can't ignore the hurt it causes either. I think as trans people, we need to continue to raise our voices, asking for more full-chested support from our allies. We can't continue to treat vague, subtle representation as representation, because that's simply not the case. Blue Eye Samurai is a beautiful love letter to disabled folks and women, with a postscript adding queer people as an afterthought in the hemline of the main character's kimono. I can only hope that the team behind it finds the courage to include us more fully before the series ends. And I can only hope that you will continue to raise your voice in support of trans people. The media we consume communicates directly to the people who create it. They pay attention. They also look out for how queer people are talked about in social media. If you raise your voice continuing to demand better and more frequent queer representation, it will come. And don't underestimate small creators' ability to create queer content and representation. We have the power to turn the tide. We have the power to create content that is consumed by these small audiences, to get the attention of these big budget creators that don't think we're worth their time. Either way, I remain hopeful for what the future holds, because I know that things have still progressed quite a fair bit, far from where they need to be, but much farther from where they've been before. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you have any pieces of queer media that you want me to cover, especially trans media, let me know in the comments down below. I want to add to this wall. I want to make a video addressing just trans representation in general and how small it is. I mean, even in pieces of media like Bridget, who's confirmed trans, we only really get one line talking about that. It's pretty disappointing, but I'm, again, hopeful that that is beginning to change. That characters like Bridget are giving us the opportunity to move forward and see ourselves represented on screen better and better and more full-throated. So for now, have a good day. I love you. Bye-bye. Do you like trans people? Do you like trans representation? Yeah? You be careful what you answer. You're getting cancelled. So silly the way you alienate trans audiences by only hinting at their existence.